This is Derek from Trade Technicals. Hope everybody is doing magnificent. So I was watching a Peter Schiff vlog yesterday on the 7th of July, and he was saying that the minimum wage is increasing from about $6.50 to $7.25 per hour, and he wasn't really too fond of this whole thing going higher. Myself, I would like to see the minimum wage up to about at least $15 an hour, but realistically, you know that's not going to happen anytime soon. Even though there's a lot of inflation, when I think of hyperinflation, that means everything should go up, including, of course, pay rates. But really, that's not going to happen, at least not to the same rate of inflation. I'll show you why later with the chart that I've created. Now, Peter Schiff was saying that companies can barely afford to pay these people at this pay rate. He says, what can be stupider than giving the employees a raise? Well, the answer to that, at least one of the things that I think is much more stupid, is how we have a system that is encouraging rich getting richer and poor getting poorer. Now, I know a lot of the big reason for this collapse happens to be because the money is debt and we're in a debt-based society, and because we have loans through the yin-yang, it's just going to go like so tremendous, and that's the truth. But also in reality, when you have so many companies, ExxonMobil, McDonald's, you could just name a whack of them, Walmart. I mean, I've seen so many companies' balance sheets. They're making billions and billions and sometimes even, billions of dollars, sometimes millions. They're making multi-millions and billions of dollars. Yet how much money are they giving back to stop the problem from the rich getting richer and poor getting poorer? They're not. Because they're so greedy, they want to make more and more and more and more. So if you're wondering where all of the dollars in the United States are located, the majority of the money is in the big corporations' hands. And that's been a big problem towards this whole economic crisis. A lot of this does happen to do because of the resource-based economy, how they're not doing it. A resource-based economy, I think, could help the situation. I'm not going to talk too much on that for this video. Peter Schiff also mentions that if he were to, say, be able to make money with an employee working for him at, say, $5 an hour, yet say he would lose paying him $7.25, that it would be illegal for him to go out and pay someone to do the work at $5 an hour. And it would also be illegal for that person to work for him at $5 an hour. Once again, he says, what can be more stupid than that? What I think is more stupid than that is how, the same answer I gave before. We're in a greedy system that we must get out of if we want to work for each other, because right now humanity is not working with each other. They're working with greed to be able to acquire more pieces of paper and more numbers on their digital computer databases. That's the way the world is working right now. It's unfortunate, but we are able to change it, and I think not only able to change it, but we must change it as we move through this 2012 shift in consciousness. He was also mentioning that what they need as far as people who are like kids, teenagers, early 20s, is to get more spending money, experience, so they can develop more skills, so they can become more valuable to their current and future employers. Yes, I'll give you that. However, the key thing is, once again, they're not getting paid for what they deserve. But the whole thing really stems down to is we got people working for a system in which we know we can get robots and technology to do work for us. And what the Zeitgeist series has been saying is they've been slowing down the rate of technology so that they don't just have this massive unemployment rate. Schiff says that increasing minimum wage doesn't create employment, that it destroys jobs. And to me, that's a good thing that we destroy jobs over the long-term time frame, because quite frankly, how many of us want to do 80 to 90, if not 95% of the jobs that are out there? Most of us don't, because it's tedious slave labor that we know we can get machinery to do. But we also live in a world, a materialistic world, that is producing more stuff than we need, and the cost of everyday living costs, they just go up so high. Prices are just so much higher than they actually should be. So we're seeing stuff like a lunch that used to be $5, that's now $9, that used to be $3, that used to be $2, that used to be $1, that used to be 50 cents. We're not seeing the wages that are going. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up this chart here. This is an inflation adjusted using shadow stats of minimum wage adjusted to August of $2008. And what we're seeing here is in 1950 we had a massive rise when unemployment rate went from 40 to 75 cents an hour. So we're seeing how the average pay rate was like 15 to 25 bucks an hour, and then back in 1980, boom, it's like a ski downhill slope down the rest of the way. No stopping since then. And back in the 1950s, it was after World War II, it was after the Great Depression. One husband could be able to get all of what they needed, be able to buy a house, be able to put food on the table for his wife and 8 kids, be able to get all of what they needed, because one, the materialistic society wasn't as big as it is today, and prices were not as expensive. So a house back in 1950 was about $7,350. So if you were working part-time, you would only need to have to work like 9,800 hours to be able to work it. And you could be able to do that in a few years. You could be able to buy a house. 1970, it would take about 11,700 hours to buy a house, just working part-time. 1990, it would take 22,000 hours to buy a house. And when it topped in 2007, 44,000 hours at part-time just to buy the median house. Today, it's about 27,500 hours, or about 689 weeks. And that's just for the house. That doesn't include other expenses like food and clothing and hydro or utilities. There's just so many expenses along the way. But the thing is, that's just all going towards minimum wage, as Peter Schiff was mentioning also that these minimum wage are like entry-level positions, and maybe in the past that was the case, but it really isn't, at least not from the little experience that I'm familiar with. When I was in my mid-20s, I think, I was working at a hotel where I was auditing their books, I was making corrections, and to me, this was an entry level. I was not living with my parents, I was paying rent and barely surviving at the time because I was making $9 an hour, where minimum wage at the time was like 7 something here in Ontario, Canada. So I was making just like 20% more than minimum wage, and this is supposed to support yourself? No, the system doesn't have us supporting ourselves. We look at the unemployment rate now, and if you look at the employment rate, not the unemployment rate, if you look at the employment rate, what percentage of the people who are employed can't pay their bills because they're getting paid peanuts? We're living in a materialistic world where it's just, everything is just so expensive, and this is just one thing to go along with the credit bubble, because all of this was so expensive. The money being debt, everybody's in debt because that's where money comes from. So I'm going to leave this video at that. The chart is available on the blog to be downloaded. And I'd like to thank everybody for your comments. I do read 98 to 99% of them. I know I don't reply to all of them, and if you ask a question, I'm not sure the answer, I'm not going to reply. I also like to thank you for your personal messages, and I know sometimes I don't send them out, so if you send me a message and I don't reply in a couple or 3 days, send another message back, because a lot of times it's just plain forgetting about the messages that are there. And if it's a long message, please send it to endlessmountain2008@yahoo.ca, because that's where I would rather read them. Sometimes it might take a few days to get back to it, but the big thing there is I can at least see when I reply to it, because the Yahoo server has a reply button that's there for me to for me to tell that it has been replied back to, that is. I'd like to thank you all for your subscriptions and your ratings. That really does help on the search engines. I'd like to thank you all for the donations that you have sent to me. That has really helped keeping this channel alive. So thank you, everybody, and good luck as we move more towards this big change in consciousness. Bye-bye, everybody.